Hi everyone, I'm Anita Sharma. You're watching AnewZ. Here's what's making news right now. French President Emmanuel Macron is booed by crowds during his visit to cyclone-hit Mayotte. A child was killed, several others injured after a knife attack at an elementary school in Croatia. Azerbaijan is handed chairmanship of the Organization of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation for the first half of the new year. We begin with the president of France. Emmanuel Macron faces frustration and mounting criticism during his visit to Mayotte. Local residents are grappling with the devastating aftermath of Cyclone Chido, demanding more aid and attention from the French government.
The situation in Mayotte remains dire following Cyclone Chido. President Macron arrived in Mayotte on Thursday and was met with an angry reception in the city of Pimenti. Residents shouted and booed, accusing the government of failing to respond promptly to the crisis. It's been more than 5 days since the cyclone struck. According to official reports, 31 people have lost their lives in Mayotte, France's poorest overseas territory. However, some local leaders fear the death toll could be in the thousands. Thousands of people remain trapped on the rubble, their homes completely destroyed. Heavy rains have hampered rescue operations, making many areas inaccessible. In Mayotte's capital, Vanuatu, some neighborhoods have been reduced to ruins. Aid distribution has been slow, leaving many in desperate need. Additionally, the government announced plans to increase the supply of food and water by air and sea. However, opposition politicians have accused the government of neglecting Mayotte, while local residents claim they have received no assistance since the cyclone hit. Earlier, a report from the French political group La France Insoumise has raised serious questions about President Emmanuel Macron's handling with the indigenous people of French overseas territories. The report specifically highlights alleged marginalization of the Kanak people of New Caledonia, accusations of neocolonialism and violent unrest following controversial government actions. LFI highlights blockades and violent clashes involving independence activists, militias and police in New Caledonia. It claims that 13 people died during the unrest, including at least 8 Kanak individuals allegedly killed by militias.
Our correspondent Ross Cullen has more on Macron's visit to Mayotte and the challenges he faces there.
Emmanuel Macron has now wrapped up his trip to Mayotte, the French Indian Ocean territory that was devastated by Cyclone Chido 6 days ago, leading to huge damage across the island and a major loss of life. There have been lots of challenges for the French authorities in responding to the disaster, notably the remote location of Mayotte, which is a 10-hour flight from Paris and is located between Mozambique and Madagascar. The airport on the island suffered severe damage as a result of the cyclone, and so in the immediate aftermath of the disaster, only military aircraft and ships could access the island of Mayotte. Now, Paris has sent hundreds of firefighters, hundreds of rescue workers and hundreds of soldiers to the island to support the rescue and cleanup operation, but it has been problematic with roads blocked, fallen trees and also damage to the container port area. Now, the French president, when he toured the island and visited different communities in his 2-day trip across Mayotte, well, there was some controversy because video did emerge showing the president shouting and crowds shouting back at him, a confrontational approach from the French president, defending the actions of the French state, saying that the French authorities were ready for the disaster. People on Mayotte argued differently. We have also seen footage of the president being contrite, a quieter approach, listening, comforting some people who've lost their homes, very tactile as well, touching and hugging people to try to show support. So 2 different sides of the president's reactions to him meeting communities in Mayotte. The French leader has now departed the French Indian Ocean island and he is set to travel to Djibouti for the traditional Christmas meal that he holds with French troops who are serving overseas. Ross Cullen, AnewZ in Paris.
Residents in Vanuatu are now living in tents after a deadly earthquake damaged their homes. Access to the country's capital, Port Vila, is restricted as search and rescue teams look for survivors amongst the rubble. Disruptions to power and communication hinder rescue efforts, while UNICEF says water contamination is a huge concern.
The aftermath of a disaster. This is what some residents in Vanuatu's capital, Port Vila, are calling home after a 7.3 magnitude earthquake has damaged their houses. Fearing unsafety, they've turned to sleeping in tents.
Because some of our houses is not safe anymore. Some of them houses where the wall fell off, the iron roof fell off. So that's why we all came here. We stay here for this time being until everything is finished, and then we can go back to our places.
International aid and emergency teams are responding to the catastrophic events, with Australia pledging its support. About 150 Australian tourists have been returned home from Vanuatu, with some reporting minor injuries.
We sat up on a hill for like 4 hours because they said normally a tsunami would come. But we are lucky. We all got out with a couple bruises, but people passed away. They said it's the worst one in 102 years.
At least 16 people have been killed by the earthquake, including one French and 2 Chinese nationals. Officials say they expect the death toll to rise as rescue efforts continue.
To the U.S. now, where President-elect Donald Trump calls on the European Union to buy more American oil and gas. Trump says the EU must account for its, quote, tremendous deficit, and warns he will levy tariffs if the EU does not comply. This as the European Commission reiterates its commitment to diversify energy sources and reduce its reliance on Russian imports.
United States President-elect Donald Trump announced today that the European Union could face tariffs if it does not address its growing trade deficit with the United States by increasing purchases of U.S. oil and gas. Currently, the European Union is a major buyer of United States energy, importing 47% of its LNG and 17% of its oil from the U.S. in the first quarter of 2024, according to Eurostat. However, Trump insists on larger-scale purchases to balance the trade deficit, warning. The European Commission responded by stating its commitment to diversifying energy sources and reducing reliance on Russian imports. Its spokesperson noted that the European Union is open to discussions with the president-elect to strengthen its ties, including in the energy sector.
And as you all know very well, the EU is committed to phasing out energy imports from Russia and diversifying our sources of supply. We're not going to go into any details about what that might entail in the future, given that the new administration isn't even in place yet. But the 2 things we want to transmit is that there is a high degree of complementarity between the EU and US in terms of our trade and economic relationship, and the President has signalled her intention to enter into a very constructive partnership with the incoming administration, including on energy issues.
Trump has consistently criticized the US-EU trade imbalance, focusing on the goods trade deficit. However, most European energy firms are privately owned, with purchasing decisions driven by market prices and efficiency rather than government mandates.
We need to be very clear about the facts here. So, the facts are that the EU and US have deeply integrated economies with overall balanced trade and investment. What do I mean when I say that? I mean that the EU has a substantial trade in goods surplus with the US, whereas the US has a substantial trade in services surplus vis-à-vis the EU. And that is not always reflected in some of the types of posts you're referencing.
The EU's increased reliance on US energy followed sanctions imposed on Russia after starting war in Ukraine in 2022, further shifting the bloc's energy trade dynamics.
Amazon workers are on strike at several facilities across the United States. They hope it pressures the online retail giant into contract talks with the union, especially since they believe the strike could lead to delays during one of the busiest shopping seasons of the year.
Hundreds of Amazon workers walked off the job early at 7 U.S. facilities across the country. These workers from cities including New York, Atlanta, and San Francisco are trying to pressure the retailer into a sit-down with their union. The protesters claim unfair pay and treatment from the tech giant.
We're working and doing these jobs and sacrificing our bodies, and we're not even getting a livable wage to live in the cities for the city that we provide our service for. And not only do I look at my coworkers and see how just dog-tired and wear and tear it takes on their bodies, but we're not even given proper benefits.
All of us are living paycheck to paycheck. All of us have gotten behind on bills. Most of us have second or third jobs, or sometimes this is our second and third job. They keep a lot of us part-time so that they don't have to give us any health benefits. So a lot of us also are paying for health benefits out of pocket as well, just to be able to go see a doctor when we get hurt.
These demonstrations come as Amazon rushes out packages in the final run-up to Christmas. However, the company says it does not expect an impact on its operations following the strike, and so its shares trading 1.5% higher in pre-market hours, a sign that investors share similar views. Earlier this year, Amazon announced a $2.1 billion investment to raise pay for fulfillment and transportation employees in the US, increasing base wages by roughly 7%. The tech giant is the world's second largest private employer after Walmart and has more than 800,000 people at its US warehouses. Observers say Amazon is unlikely to come to the table to bargain, as that could open the door for more union actions.
Officials in Ukraine report that Russian missile attacks on Kyiv during Friday's rush hour caused casualties and damage. Russia says its strikes on Ukrainian targets were in retaliation for alleged attacks on Rostov. Russian forces launched 8 missiles, including hypersonic Kinzhal and Iskander missiles, according to Sergei Popko, the head of Kyiv's military administration. Ukrainian air defenses attempted to intercept the strike. Kyiv police reported at least 11 injuries. Russia's defense ministry confirmed the strikes were a response to alleged Ukrainian attacks on Rostov using U.S. and British missiles, including ATACMS and Storm Shadow systems. The EU will deliver an additional 30 billion euros of financial support to Ukraine next year. European Council President Antonio Costa made the announcement after a meeting with EU leaders in Brussels. Costa pointed out that the EU already provided about 130 billion euros in financial aid to Ukraine since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion back in 2022. The president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, stated that Ukraine could begin EU accession talks early next year, with more negotiations to follow.
Ukraine on its path of
We will implement the 15 sanctions package against Russia we approve this week. This package closes loopholes and limits circumvention, and especially targets the so-called shadow fleet. Second, we have already delivered about 130 billion euros of financial support, and we will deliver an additional 30 billion euro in 2025.
And in parallel, we continue to accompany Ukraine on its path of accession to our union. If Ukraine keeps up the good work, we should be ready to open the first cluster of accession negotiations early next year. Some others could follow during that year.
Still in Brussels, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, urges Europe and the U.S. to adopt a united and resolute stance amid the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Zelensky highlighted the pressing need for coordinated efforts to ensure security and stability in that region.
At a press conference in Brussels, the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, reiterated Ukraine's position against accepting a frozen conflict and stressed the importance of security guarantees for the country.
We must understand that we cannot live with a frozen conflict. When it comes to a ceasefire, in any conflict, in any war, people know what will happen after, how it will all end. We need to know what tomorrow is in order to make a ceasefire today.
The Ukrainian leader also highlighted ongoing discussions about potential foreign peacekeeping efforts, stressing the need for US involvement in these talks. Commenting on the incoming US administration, Zelensky expressed optimism.
Welcome, Donald. What can I say? That's for us, it's very important that I think that President Trump is a strong man, and I want very much to have him on our side. For me, it's very important. I want to discuss with him more details about this war. I think it's very important because he was not in this war, because he was not the president. It's understandable. And I want to share with him more details.
Responding to Russian President Vladimir Putin's suggestion to revisit a 2022 Istanbul agreement, Zelensky dismissed the claims, clarifying that Ukraine never accepted any Russian ultimatums during those talks.
Ukraine did not agree to the Russian ultimatum. They tried to take the next steps to soften their position somewhat regarding this ultimatum. And these were meetings, you remember. They were both held in Belarus and in Turkey. And they called all these meetings the Istanbul Agreement. Ukraine did not sign anything. There were no agreements. There was a response to a Russian ultimatum.
The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, attended Brussels, where he met European leaders and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte to discuss strengthening Kyiv's war effort and securing long-term security guarantees.
Thank you for being here.
To Zagreb, Croatia, where a child was killed, several others left injured after a knife attack at an elementary school. The Ministry of Health confirmed the attacker stabbed 5 people, wounding 4, killing 1. According to local media, the attacker is a former student of the school and now detained by the police. Prime Minister Andrej Plenković says he is horrified by the attack and that authorities are now investigating. Thick smog grips Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, creating a hazardous environment for residents. The city is currently facing one of Europe's worst pollution crises, with many struggling to even breathe.
According to IQ Air, which tracks global pollution levels, Sarajevo has ranked as Europe's most polluted city, surpassing even New Delhi. The city's air quality has reached hazardous levels, causing serious health concerns for residents. Local residents reported difficulty breathing, with many expressing concern for vulnerable family members.
After getting out of this kind of air, it is impossible to avoid feeling a tightness in your nose, throat and lungs, and you do not have to be an expert to recognize its negative impact on health.
Air quality expert Miris Bahek stressed the long-term improvements depend on reducing fossil fuel use and traffic congestion.
The citizens of Sarajevo breathe this polluted air. The issue in Sarajevo can only be resolved by phasing out fossil fuel and alleviating traffic congestion, as the existing road infrastructure is inadequate to support the volume of vehicles circulating in the city.
Despite previous promises to ban all the cars and suspend outdoor activities during poor air quality, the local government has yet to implement these measures. Public health concerns are growing as Sarajevo struggles to cope with the pollution crisis.
Syria's de facto leader Ahmed al-Shara calls on Western countries to lift sanctions as the country navigates a transitional period. Al-Shara, the leader of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group that ousted Bashar al-Assad, believes drafting a new constitution is crucial for the future. He says sanctions no longer make sense and wants them removed. Al-Shara acknowledges the challenges posed by HTS being labeled a terrorist organization by the West, but he says he is looking ahead.
We must deal with the Syrian issue in line with current events. These current events require the lifting of all sanctions, because these sanctions were placed on Syria due to the regime that was ruling Syria and had committed all these crimes. These sanctions must be lifted, then we will be able to implement our programs for growth and reform in the country. In my belief, Syria will be normal, and that is something that I will push for. But the final decision to the structure and constitution of the state should not be in the hands of one person, which means I can't tell you that Syria must be in this structure and so on. This is illogical, as there are 27 million people living in Syria, and it has those with competence and expertise, as well as people who care about their country and nation. So I'll be leaving all of this in the hands of specialized committees chosen by the people to determine the laws of the upcoming state.
Still in Syria, we're getting more information about the notorious Seda prison. AnewZ special correspondent Adan Nasser takes a closer look at the prison, which has become synonymous with arbitrary detention, torture, and the murder of countless people.
This is Adan Nasser with AnewZ. I'm reporting to you live from Damascus, Syria.
What stands behind me is the infamous Seda prison. For many years, innocent people were wrongly detained here, tortured, executed. Now, free for the public to roam around, for people to see and witness precisely the brutality of Assad's regime. The question is, what comes next? You can see these tiny little cell doors with numbers on them. The horrors that people had to endure for countless years. Take a look here. Shoes of detainees, civilians. We don't know what is to become of this place. The question is, what will become of Syria, the heart of the nation? For more, follow us at AnewZ. This is Adan Nasser.
Adan, thank you. Well, for more in-depth coverage from Syria, please visit our website as well as our social networks. Meantime, Syria's new education minister is focusing on rebuilding schools and reforming the curriculum. Nazir Mohammed Al-Qadri says girls' rights to education will not be restricted and schools will continue to welcome all students.
Syria's new education system is beginning a new chapter. The country's new education minister, Nazir Mohammed Al-Qadri, has outlined plans to rebuild thousands of schools. He says the curriculum will be revised to remove political influences from the past while keeping the core academic and professional content intact.
Our mission is very difficult today because the regime destroyed the schools, so there is a need to restore and build more than 9,000 schools. Allowing students to return to their schools is not an easy task as well. Rearranging teachers, including all sects and religions, to their areas is not an easy task either.
Primary schools will remain mixed, and secondary schools will continue to be separated by gender, maintaining a long-standing tradition. Speaking from his office in Damascus, Al-Qadri stressed that all communities in Syria, including minorities, will have equal opportunities in education as the country works to rebuild and recover. Education remains a key focus for Syria's new leadership as they aim to provide stability and equal opportunities for students across the country.
Turning to Azerbaijan, the country is handed the chairmanship of the Organization of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation for the first half of 2025. It was announced at the 49th meeting of the Council of Ministers of Foreign Affairs held online. Deputy Foreign Minister of Azerbaijan, Yalchin Rafiyev, represented the country at the meeting, which acknowledged Azerbaijan's growing influence with the global climate agenda. Delegates highlighted the country's significant contributions to climate financing and carbon market agreements, as showcased at the recent COP29 summit. The session concluded with the adoption of the meeting's protocol. Caspian countries extend the ban on commercial sturgeon fishing until next year to protect the region's unique aquatic resources. During the 8th session of the Caspian Sea Commission held in Astrakhan, Russia, Azerbaijan, Iran, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan agreed to allow sturgeon fishing only for research and reproduction purposes. No export quotas for 2025 were set. Restoration efforts are ongoing, with millions of young sturgeon released into the sea this year. Despite these measures, sturgeon populations remain far below historic levels. Turkish Airlines claims the Guinness World Record for the airline flying to the most countries, further solidifying its position as a global leader in the aviation industry. It's held the title of flying to the most countries in the world since 2012.
The prestigious record was officially certified at Santiago's Arturo Merino Benitez International Airport following the Turkish flag carrier's inaugural flight to Chile. With the addition of this new route, Turkish Airlines now operates in 131 countries, including 120 active routes in the past year, as confirmed by Guinness World Records. Guinness World Records official Talal Omar praised the airline for its vision, calling the milestone a testament to Turkish Airlines' global impact on aviation. Founded in 1933 with a modest fleet, Turkish Airlines now operates 491 aircraft, serving 352 destinations. As a member of Star Alliance, the airline continues to expand its network, reaffirming its commitment to uniting the world through Turkey.
Let's take you on a journey now through the world's longest underground art gallery, Stockholm's mesmerizing metro system. Beneath the bustling streets of Sweden's capital lies an extraordinary fusion of art and architecture, with over 90 stations transformed into captivating visual masterpieces.
Stockholm's metro system isn't just a way to get from point A to point B. It's also a mesmerizing journey through the largest underground art gallery on the planet. With over 90 stations adorned with breathtaking works of art, Stockholm's subway is a must-see destination for art lovers and curious travelers. Spanning 7 decades of creativity, the artwork in the metro system dates back to the 1950s and continues to inspire new generations of artists.
Stockholm is unique in the way that we have such a long tradition, that we have been working with this ever since the 1950s. So we are soon celebrating 70 years. But also that even if the system is small, with only 100 stations, 94 of them have art. So it's also the amount of art.
At the King's Garden, commuters are greeted by a regal entrance hall featuring classical statues and water features. These stunning replicas echo the grandeur of a royal palace that once stood nearby. Meanwhile, T-Centralen, the network's central hub, invites travelers into a serene world of whitewashed tunnels, where blue wines and floral patterns stretch gracefully across the walls and ceiling. Created by artist Per-Olof Ultwed, the murals also pay tribute to the unsung heroes of the metro. Silhouettes of the tunnel workers can be spotted in the artwork. Some stations like Stadion blur the lines between art and architecture. Dubbed one of the cave stations, Stadion's vivid sky blue walls and vibrant rainbow arc have become Instagram-worthy icons for visitors.
If you travel around in the metro, you will find art from the 50s, 60s, 70s, well, until contemporary art, because still, this work is still going on. What is unique, that is the kind of architecture you'll find at the stations from the 1970s and onwards, We call them the cave stations or the grotto stations.
From the fiery reds of one station to the serene blues of another, Stockholm's underground transforms a daily commute into a stunning visual journey.
Well, that's all from our team. Thank you so much for watching ANewZ. Please stay up to date by visiting our website, anewz.tv. Bye for now and have a great weekend.